Good afternoon. Welcome to this session on Belfast, its real estate and development journey and ultimate destination. This is part of MIPIM's series examining the UK's regional recovery. I am your host today. My name is Anna White. I am a property journalist across the Nationals. As you all know, this session was meant to be held last March in Cannes. I can apologise for the change in venue, but actually Belfast's journey has got more interesting over the last 10 months. So now feels like a really opportune time to have this discussion. Today, our esteemed panel is going to introduce you to the city, its investment strategy, infrastructure projects and deals underway despite difficult climes we find ourselves in. We will cover the impact of COVID, Brexit, and even go to the US presidency, and we're doing all of this in just 1 hour. Today, our panellists are Suzanne Wiley, Chief Executive of Belfast City Council. Hello, Suzanne. Steve Harper, Executive Director of Invest NI. Professor Greer, who is just joining us now, Vice Chancellor of Queen's University Belfast, Chris Conway, Chief Executive of TransLink, and Joe O'Neill, Chief Executive of Belfast Harbour. You should be able to see and hear all of us. We'll start with 5 minutes of Q&A between me and each panel member, and then we will go into a full discussion, at which point please feel free to use the chat function at the bottom of your screen and ask us questions. No trolling, please. And we will try and weave those questions in. This session will be recorded, so you can also watch it back. We're going to start with Suzanne, as I said, Chief Executive of Belfast City Council and born and bred Belfaster. No one is going to talk more passionately about the city than Suzanne is. And she's going to start us with a summary of the investment journey for Belfast over the last 5 years and take us up to last March. Suzanne, if we can start with you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Anna, and good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to know that so many people are on this webinar this afternoon, and I think Anna is quite right. The Belfast journey is incredibly interesting, and this is absolutely the right time to be having this particular session, so we can share live updates with you this afternoon. So just to give you the context, really, which is what Anna has asked me to start off with. Belfast has obviously undergone more than 20 years of its peace process, and obviously it was a very, very strong city, which had a big focus on engineering and innovation in its history. Obviously, coming out of peace and over the last 10 years, this city has transformed itself beyond all belief, and to a man and a woman, every investor that comes here for the first time to see the really exciting opportunities are really blown away by that transformation and what is actually happening here in this city. In terms of our sector strengths and where the jobs of the here and now and the future are, they are still very strong. We're really strong in health and life sciences, in software development, in digital development, particularly cybersecurity, in advanced manufacturing, and also in the creative industries. You would be amazed to see the big names, the big global brands that have come to Belfast through foreign direct investment over the last 10 years or so, and that's down to Steve and his teams in Invest NI out there marketing Belfast internationally. We have created more than 10,000 jobs in the last 5 years through foreign direct investment alone, and that has been increased upon significantly by our own growth in our local businesses in those particular sectors that I have talked about. And those companies, why do they come here? Why are they still setting up business here in Belfast? Well, it's primarily because of the skills and the talent that they can get. It's also incredibly cost competitive as well in terms of labour, but occupation costs as well. And there's a great quality of life here. This city is set in the most beautiful surroundings. And whilst it's not Cannes in terms of the weather, it certainly, has a brilliant quality of life. And we have a brilliant ecosystem here. You'll see this is some of Team Belfast, only a small selection today of the very best of Team Belfast. You've got around this panel, but we are all on the same page, all 100% connected. We have the same ambition that we've all signed up to and agreed to, and we are co-investing with the private sector to make this a reality. So all of that in foreign direct investment and growth in our own Indigenous businesses has led to 2.5 million square foot of office development either has been completed or is in completion. And in 2019, absolutely the biggest uptake of Grade A office in our history in many years. So that trajectory incredibly strong. And tourism, another key sector for us, obviously hit badly by COVID, but was becoming a £2 billion industry for us, has led to an increase in a third of the number of bed spaces over the last 5 years, with new hotels popping up all over the city and more in the planning process. Creative industries, incredibly small, and Joe will tell you about the fact that we currently have 3 studios, film studios within Belfast, and another one planned. So we will have a great creative industries sector here. We do already, and it will expand too. In terms of our super connectivity, we have invested significantly in telecommunications and IT, and that is continuing. So we have great clusters of business. We have great accolades in terms of particularly cybersecurity and our Centre of Excellence, which is a UK Centre of Excellence in cybersecurity, and particularly in our health and life sciences as well, and diagnostics, etc., and products in terms of life sciences.
Suzanne, that really... Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just going to finish by saying that, and I know you want to move on to the rest of the questions. Obviously, there are lots of USPs for Belfast, and that's what we'll come back to later on. And we had almost full employment before we got to 2020. And we believe that we still have the same fundamentals that will bring us through COVID, and we will continue on that trajectory going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm sorry to cut you off. So that takes us really, doesn't it, up to March, and you obviously had some real momentum in your journey. How did COVID hit that?
Like every big city across these islands, of course, we've been hit by COVID. Of course, the main impacts have been on the retail sectors, the hospitality sectors, and tourism sectors as well. And of course, we're cushioned with furlough, so we have to all look at what's going to happen with that. But believe it or not, Steve will tell you when you speak to him that foreign direct investment has continued during COVID. Some of our companies here have proved to be extremely resilient on a global basis, particularly in financial technology. Companies like Citibank, companies like Allstate, and they have actually expanded their workforce here during COVID, and a lot of tech companies have done likewise as well. Offices are still progressing, still being built within the city. The cranes are still there, and the construction is still happening. There is still public sector investment happening, and I know that Chris will tell you about the great opportunity in terms of our new transport-led regeneration hub, and organisations like the Harbour and the Harbour owning and Titanic Quarter. There are major regeneration plans still happening in our private sector. Investors here, and of course over the last number of years we've had significant more investment from UK developers, from institutional investment funds, etc. They are still bringing forward their plans for really significant regeneration schemes across the city.
The city must, I mean, like all big cities, must feel sadly empty at the moment. But I know future plans for posterity for Belfast hang on city centre living. What are your plans to try and up the residential in the core of Belfast?
Well, I think this is one of the biggest opportunities ahead of us, because we've done really well in office. We have great independent retail that we will continue to support going forward. We have our new university campus from Ulster University that has moved into the city centre and will open its doors this September to 15,000 more students. That has led to a big explosion of student accommodation. But what we don't have enough of in the city, because of our past, is mixed family, mixed income living within this city. And there is demand there, significant demand in all sectors. So whether that's affordable, whether that's social housing, or whether that's built to rent, or whether that's mixed family accommodation, that certainly is the sector to keep the biggest eyes on in future. And of course, we as an authority are really keen to promote mixed housing development across the city, and we are looking at our own land assets as to how we can incentivise and partner and JV with developers to bring that forward. Now, I know that all of the regeneration sites as well across the city, Anna, so if you look at what the waterfront site, which is a huge regeneration scheme, they're currently looking at their housing mix there again. Also Tribeca in the middle of the core of the city centre, looking again at its housing mix. And of course, when you hear from Joe later on, he'll tell you about the plans in the harbour and TQ for more housing. But what we want is to create neighbourhoods, and I think you'll hear that from many cities. And there is a clear plan by this authority and working with all of our partners to do just that, to create those neighbourhoods with more green space, with more facilities in the core of the city centre as well, and more active travel, of course.
Thank you, Suzanne. This feels like a good moment to bring Steve Harper in, Executive Director of Invest NI. Steve, could you kind of mirror Suzanne in the journey of the last 5 years, but focus in on FDI specifically? I'm really keen to kind of understand the breakdown of sector and source.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be here. So just a little bit of background. Invest Northern Ireland, we're the regional business development agency for Northern Ireland. So our role really is to try and assist in growing the Northern Ireland economy. And I guess some of the stats: for every pound that government funds that are invested by Invest Northern Ireland, £5 is returned and contributed into the local economy. Suzanne talked about the sort of great growth in the last 5 years, and she talked about the 10,000 jobs being created by foreign direct investors. And of that, 99 brand new investors came to Northern Ireland in the course of the last 5 years, creating 6,000 of those 10,000 jobs were brand new. People who'd never been here, never invested in Northern Ireland. And what's really good and strong about that is that over 75% of those jobs pay well above the Northern Ireland private sector median. So they're creating really good, well-paying jobs in Northern Ireland. And it's really sort of contributed to the fact, and it's really important to say, that Northern Ireland continues to rank globally as one of the leading investment destinations for technology and digital and ICT and cybersecurity. And we don't see any part of that dropping off at the moment. Talking about sources of that, the US by far is our largest source of high value FDI and will continue to be, and is very, very strong. Probably one of the most pleasing aspects of the, I guess, journey for Northern Ireland and Belfast over the last number of years is that over 70% of those companies who invest once go on to reinvest. And that, it's easy to sell somewhere for the first time, but it's the second sale of somewhere that is the hard bit. And I think that's where Northern Ireland really sort of proves itself to those investors.
That's really interesting. Can I just take you back to give us a bit of a flavour around how COVID impacted the Northern Ireland economy and GDP, just to give us some background?
Yeah, so it's no different to any other part of the world. We've been pretty hard hit with, as Suzanne has said, specifically in the retail and hospitality sectors. They've, for 6 weeks, practically all global markets pretty much stopped. We've seen that rebound, and we've seen a rebound in the third quarter very steeply, coming back up, and really good to see. And anecdotally, from speaking to companies right across Northern Ireland, they've really seen their export markets start to open up and start to go again. We as an organisation have got 23 offices around the world, and so we've been really able to sort of see what's happening, and we have Every Monday morning we have a call with the entire team, so we're able to hear live what's happening in parts of the world, and it's really interesting to see that Asia is starting to open up. In fact, I'd go beyond saying starting to open up. It has opened up, and China is almost back to normal in terms of their way of life there. And we're starting to see that in terms of business deals being done there as well.
What do you think has made, I mean, there were live deals being done all of last year, you know, in really difficult times. What's made Belfast so resilient? What is it? What's the key?
It's our people, Anna. That's a really easy question to answer. So Northern Ireland, we were really lucky right across Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland is the first region in the European Union to have full broadband coverage. And so actually our executive need an awful lot of credit for the foresight that they had to put in place the digital structures. And at a time when lots of regions in Europe weren't doing that, Northern Ireland was. And something like a global pandemic comes along, it's only then that you realize the value of that investment. And you know, so pretty much overnight, you know, we're a public sector organization in West Northern Ireland. We've 600 people, but luckily overnight we were able to go switch straight to working remotely, all of our staff working from home with digital infrastructure, and carry on in business as normal. And that was replicated right across the range of I guess, business and professional services and lots of our large employers, specifically in Belfast.
We spoke the other day, Steve, about returners, bringing people back to Northern Ireland and to Belfast specifically. What's the investment strategy to try and bring people back? Because it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? You need the investment to create the jobs, but you need the skills to be here in the first place.
Yeah, well, I think what's really interesting is that because of this pandemic, it has really, I guess, progressed rapidly the rise of remote working, and actually the whole ethos of not having to be in an office. And I think, you know, when the whole of Europe kind of went into lockdown, quite a lot of people migrated back to their homes because they didn't need to be in the middle of London or the middle of Dublin or Paris or wherever. And actually, when they came back, they realized, actually, you know what, I can have my career in London or in Paris was working here in Northern Ireland. And that was the first, I guess, impression that they got. But then as they were here and they started to hear more and more about what's happening in Northern Ireland, and when you're out of a place for a long time, you actually maybe lose touch with how fast things are growing, and they actually started to see the opportunities that are here in Northern Ireland. And so we have seen a lot of people who have, you know, moved back to work here in their parents' house or have bought houses here for the quality of life, and were maybe working for an employer in London or Dublin, actually now starting to work for employers based in Northern Ireland here. And that is something that we really want to build on. You know, we've got two brilliant universities here in Northern Ireland, but unfortunately a lot of our young people still have to go to university across in England and Scotland, and we now have got the careers and we've got the investors who can give those young people the careers back here where we have a brilliant quality of life.
And that fits back into city centre living, doesn't it? And trying to make sure that these people have got a kind of holistic lifestyle of job and somewhere appropriate to live. I think this is the ideal moment, actually, to bring in Professor Greer. We're really lucky to have him with us this afternoon. On the subject of returners, actually, we want to keep hold of the talent in the first place in the centre of Belfast, and Northern Ireland more widely. So what's the impact of the brain drain on the Northern Ireland and Belfast economy at the moment, and how are the universities in Ireland working to address this?
So currently we lose several thousand students each year from Northern Ireland to Great Britain for their education. And that's because of limited number of university places for NI students provided by our executive, and clearly we're lobbying to address that. But more importantly, perhaps for the topics today, we are actively recruiting more and more students from the international space. And for example, even despite COVID, we had a substantial demand from China and India to come to Belfast to study. And indeed, we laid on 3 direct charter flights from Beijing to Belfast International Airport to bring these students in safely because they wanted to be here, they wanted to study. And we mustn't forget the impact that this university has on the economy. Each year, Queen's delivers about £1.9 billion of economic impact, which is a 19-to-1 benefit to cost ratio when you look at direct government funding. So we do a really good job. We're also the #1 university in the UK in terms of being an entrepreneurial space, a place where new companies develop. And we're the #1 university for knowledge transfer partnerships, where universities work with business or industry to solve problems. So as a Russell Group university that's a research intensive university, we can make a real difference, not only in the skills agenda, driving the graduates who can take forward the knowledge economy, but we can also drive innovation that will attract new companies in and will help them to grow and develop here, taking on new technologies to become even bigger and better as they proceed down their journey.
So does this fit with the 5 new centres of innovation? Can you explain to us how that all works in?
So you're referring to one of the regional growth deals that's developing in Belfast, and the Belfast Region City deal is really fundamentally important to the future of our economy. I lead the innovation pillar on behalf of the City Council, and we have 5 big projects, but they work in key areas. One is advanced manufacturing, because manufacturing is becoming more and more digitally orientated, for example, with new technologies enhancing the manufacturing base. We're looking at creative industries, and indeed Queen's has already put over 2.5 million into a new creative industries research lab here, even in advance of the City deal. We're looking at health research, and Northern Ireland's got some unique characteristics. We have a single health and social care record and system across the whole of the population, which very few places in Europe have at the scale that we can deliver it on, which is terrific for health innovation. So we've got a resource on health innovation and research, and we've got also a centre on digital health and a centre on digital technologies, because digital technologies, I think, as Suzanne signalled earlier, are really important for us as a city. And perhaps our greatest strength or our greatest reputation is in the cybersecurity area, but we know that that can advance into other areas of digital technologies. So this is a big investment. Around 225 to 250 million of public sector investment will go into these 5 initiatives that will help pump prime that drive towards a knowledge economy, really putting the foot down and letting us accelerate across these 5 key areas.
And in terms of investment, what are the opportunities around residential, for not only for students, but moving into that kind of young professionals market, which is a key strand of the Belfast deal going forwards?
Well, as a university, we're expanding. You know, for example, we've pressed the button in the last few weeks on an expansion to our management school, which will cost £30 million. And we have a £40 million new student centre being developed. So our student numbers are growing, largely international students, I would say, rather than home students, because home students have a limited number. These students need accommodation. We've already opened 2 new bespoke residences in the city centre, and there is private sector student residence development also in the city centre. So it's great to see young people in the city centre. Now, of course, they're going to graduate. Hopefully they'll be attracted to stay here and take advantage of the jobs that we've been discussing. And they'll need accommodation. So as well as the areas that Suzanne's highlighted, I guess we should also highlight the accommodation needs of young professionals who will be staying in the city, perhaps coming here for a master's degree, finding employment in the city and wanting to stay in the city centre. And for the undergraduate student whose career stays here in Belfast, I guess once they've had a taste of city centre living, the accessibility of restaurants, of bars, and also the accessibility to where they work, that's a really good quality of life. And I suspect that many of the undergraduates who've sampled the city centre living will want to continue that.
And it must compete living cost-wise as well, I suppose, with the other UK regional cities very favourably. Oh,
very favourably indeed. It's one of our selling points. The cost of living for the student population, which is very important, is incredibly competitive.
Just quickly, sorry, jump in, Suzanne.
Yeah, just to add, I mean, I think just what Ian has said there is really, if you look around these islands, it's quite a unique opportunity in Belfast for that, you know, build to rent type sector for young professionals, because not only do we really not have enough private apartments, etc. in the city, and there is demand. But we've just built all of this new student accommodation that we really, we were way behind other cities in doing that. And so those students have got top class accommodation now, and they absolutely will need somewhere to go when they come out of that student accommodation. So I think it is really unique in terms of looking around these islands.
Quickly, before we leave the subject of talent, it's really interesting what Professor Greer said around Belfast University becoming so much more popular with international students coming over. I mean, is that of the last year or so, and why do we think that is?
Well, in the last 2 years, I came here in 2018, and I have to say it's been a terrific move, very exciting place to be. We've increased our international numbers since I arrived by over 25%, which is quite substantial, with a focus on India and China, but that focus is forever increasing. And an interesting one is actually the US, because Ireland has a particular link to North America and is seen as very attractive to postgraduate students. So we've got a significant cohort coming from the US as well as from China and from India. An example of some of the initiatives we've had are that for Indian students, we now accept one of their qualifying examinations for Indian universities. We use it as part of our admissions criteria for Queen's. And I think we're the first UK university to do that. It's a high quality examination. It's a really good discriminator, and it identifies some of the top students in India who might want to study in a top international university. And we've been fortunate to attract them here to Belfast.
That's fascinating.
If I could just add to that as well, I think it's really interesting as well, that the pandemic has kind of led to the rise of regional cities as much more attractive than big cities. And certainly, we know from some of our contacts and who are students in Ian's university that, Belfast actually became very attractive because it wasn't London. And it was seen as safer during the time of a pandemic, and lots of green space and fresh air and lots of rain as we have here. So I do think that pandemic has driven some of that change as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Aware that we will have lots of infrastructure bods watching today, so I wanted to kind of go to boots on the ground and talk to Chris and Joe about some of the major infrastructure projects that are underway in Belfast. So first to Chris Conway, who's Chief Exec of Translink. Chris, could you outline the Weavers Cross project for us to start with, and the opportunities it presents?
Yes, can do, Anna, and again, welcome to everyone attending today. So Weavers Cross, as Suzanne has already mentioned, is a transport-led regeneration project. It's on a 20-acre site with a unique opportunity to develop over 1.3 million square feet of mixed-use space right in the heart of Belfast. It actually sits between our two main universities, between Queen's and Ulster University, also between our two main hospitals, and surrounded by hotels, leisure and tourist attractions all about. The transport hub itself is at the heart of Weavers Cross. It's a publicly funded project. It's on site today with completion due in 2025. It's a 160,000 square feet facility, which will provide bus and rail connectivity right across the island of Ireland and create capacity for growth. And it will be a gateway for the arrival and departure of over 20 million passengers per annum, providing direct connection to all major airports. And it'll also be the terminus for the intercity service between Belfast and Dublin, which is the UK's only land border with the EU now. And this is further enhanced by the recent government announcements that are considering high-speed rail links between Belfast and Dublin as well. Now, we know that transport hubs are proven to be transformational impact on investment cities. There's very good examples across the UK with King's Cross, Sheffield and Manchester Piccadilly, all of which we visited and had a look at to see how we can actually create something like that at Weavers Cross. And we've really seen how these stations release high quality development opportunities around the stations. And it's something we expect to see at Weavers Cross. And in fact, with the commencement of the construction of the Belfast Transport Hub, which is one of the largest construction projects in Northern Ireland, we're already seeing these effects with increasing development and economic activity around the station and on the station approaches. Now, the land around Weavers Cross is mostly in Translink ownership, and we're looking for a private sector partner to work with us on this opportunity. We've already had a developer day in December, and we had great interest there from local, national and international developers on that. And we've a current master plan with around 1.3 million square feet of flexible mixed-use space to accommodate different sections from commercial office. We've talked about build to rent maybe being an option going forward, and also social and leisure. And we really see this as the most important development opportunity in the city over the next 5 to 10 years. And we're really encouraged with the interest that's been shown by developers already. And I think it really supports the Belfast city agenda for more people to work and live in the city. This will be a flexible space for commercial, build to rent, as I said, and lots of other opportunities as well. And it is already becoming a new destination. People are interested to see what's happening with the construction. A lot of investments already starting to happen around the area, and it is starting to become a new destination for Belfast.
Is it on just to sort of cross-referencing Crossrail, is it on time and on budget, and given the last 12 months?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we obviously, all construction and everything else has had an impact of COVID-19, but we lost a couple of weeks at the beginning of March, and we've been able to pull that back, and it's currently on plan at this point. The major demolition on the site is all complete. Groundworks have now started, and we'll be starting to look to the main works later on this year. So it is progressing extremely well. And as I said, we're progressing well now with the procurement for a master developer to help us in the building out of Weaver's Cross. And I think one other point I'd like to make just is that this is really a catalyst for change in Belfast, a catalyst towards sustainable and active travel. There's already considerable cycle and pedestrian linkages and public realm schemes being created around Belfast, and we will have an active travel hub located at Weaver's Cross, which will be the centre of all of that. We're also delivering a number of very significant sustainable transport projects in Belfast. The first of our new hydrogen buses went into service in December, and we've already placed an order for over 100 zero-emission buses, which will go into service in Belfast and in Derry, Londonderry. And we've in 2018 we launched a bus rapid transit system which connects east and west of Belfast, a very successful service, and we're now planning for phase 2 of that, which will run north-south in Belfast, with new train carriages arriving later this year, and that will expand our rail fleet and create more capacity in and out of Belfast. We're also expanding our interurban GO line bus network with new fleet arriving in 2022. And all of these services will be integrated with a new tap-on, tap-off contactless ticketing system, very similar to what London has. And we'll be rolling that out later this year and connect all of these services together in a very simple way for people to use public transport. And I think, when you put all of that together with what we're doing with Weaver's Cross, what we're doing with the Belfast Transport Hub, it really reflects the sort of innovation and the ambition we have to make Belfast, one of the top cities in Europe for sustainable mobility.
Yeah, well, we can hear from that just how well TransLink and Weaver's Cross fit into that kind of vision to become a leading, active and breathable city. It fits there with Joe as well. It'd be great to hear about Belfast Harbour and the Titanic Quarter and that kind of the other side of infrastructure in Belfast.
Yeah, delighted to try and expand on that. And again, thank you to everyone for joining the call this afternoon. I think where we stay and fit into this ecosystem, as Suzanne talked about, is you've heard very clearly from Suzanne around the city-led, city council-led growth and living strategy, if you like, for the city. You've heard from Steve around that foreign direct investment strategy and how successful it's been, from Ian regarding how our skills and education outcomes are very commendable, and we have new growth strategies, particularly in the innovation sector. And then from Chris regarding our sustainable transport initiatives. And we try to bring all that together through our physical developments in the harbour estate. And I think what we bring to the party is the scale of opportunity, which I imagine a lot of the listeners on the call would want to know. Are there scalable projects here in Belfast, and then a wide array of sectors for investment by them. And then finally, an important element is through that ecosystem that we have here. I think we have a tremendous track record here in the city of deliverability and certainty and outcomes from the projects that we are considering and on the ground with. To give you some indications on scale, Belfast Harbour Estate, 2,000 acres, so it's the largest single harbour estate in the UK. Within that, we have landmark defined areas, including Titanic Quarter, which when we launched that mid-2000s was the largest waterfront development site in Europe. It's not quite that now, but it's probably still about the third largest waterfront development site in Europe. So still huge potential there. Of that 2,000 acres, we have about 200 acres available for development for mixed use. Within that Titanic Quarter area alone, there's over 100 acres. So to give you a flavour of the sort of schemes that we are currently embarking on, we currently have 430,000 square feet of gross Grade A office accommodation under construction. I can see the two sites just immediately outside my window here, and they'll complete by the end of this year. So we've huge office space availability for the FDI targets in particular that Steve talked about. We have plans to accommodate about 4,000 residential units through Belfast Harbour initiatives and areas within it, including Titanic Quarter. So what we didn't pick up in the call today is what's called the Belfast Agenda, which is our growth agenda to 2035. There is a plan for 66,000 additional residents in the city. By 2035, it's about 25,000 residential units. Significant number of those will be within the harbour estate, and they will be, as Suzanne talked about, mixed family, mixed income, and inclusive of BTR, which is the big opportunity. So an opportunity for investment for 4,000 units. On our leisure side, we have huge leisure attractions already in the harbour estate, which are integral to the city, in particular Titanic Belfast with 1 million visitors. We see that as a platform to leverage further leisure investments. We're particularly interested in speaking to other leisure operators who can bring quite innovative leisure projects to the city to integrate with Titanic Belfast and some of the other leisure projects that we've recently signed up to, including aquariums, etc. There's opportunities for probably another 1,000 hotel beds within the Belfast Harbour estate going forward to address that leisure and tourism growth opportunity we have. And then finally, from our perspective, in the very diverse portfolio that we have, creative media, as you heard at the outset, is a substantial part of our business and part of city life and city economic outcomes. We have 3 studios, which are home to a lot of major productions. We have the world's largest content company, I'm bound to secrecy, just moved on site last week with us. We have Paramount here at the minute. We just completed with the Universal Studios project. So we attract all of the global names in creative media. 2 opportunities there for us, just growth in that sector, as there's a huge demand for content. So we have planning permission for a quadrupling of our stages. We went out to tender last week on those. And when we complete that and deliver that next year, we will be the 2nd largest media hub outside of London within the UK, which has been a strategic ambition for the city and the region from 5 years ago. And then aligned with that, I'm speaking to one of the innovation projects that Ian talked about. We are establishing a world lead for virtual production. And as part of that studio expansion, we're going to develop the first fully commercial and combined R&D virtual production facility, which will be made to all of those global production companies. So I honestly could keep talking for another 15, 20 minutes.
I'm not going to let you.
But what I would like to say is they are huge, they are diverse. And I think through this ecosystem that you've heard about, we'd love to chat to investors and see how collectively we can deliver against their ambitions for investment in the city.
Joe, thank you. It would feel remiss not to bring in Brexit at this point when talking about the harbour. How is, quickly before we move on to the open panel session, how is that impacting your world? Yeah,
listen, no surprise it's consumed a huge amount of our time in the lead up to the end of 2020 and early days here. Limited impact, I have to say, from Belfast Harbour's perspective. We have to recognise there are significant teething issues at the minute, but for the most part they are happening in the GB marketplace, where we do have unfettered access for our Northern Ireland trade into the GB market, which is clearly a very significant trade flow for us. Equally, so we have a lot of trade coming from GB to us, and that's where the issues are in terms of the paperwork and the compliance with the new systems, and which is creating some issues at some of our customer counterparty ports in the UK, in GB, in Ryan, Liverpool and Heysham. But to date, we've experienced minimal interruption. And I hope that is the case, and that we are able to smooth out some of those other regulatory issues that are impacting our customers over the next weeks, and hopefully not into too many months.
I hope so too. We're going to move on now into the group panel discussion. So if I can take all of the panelists off mute. And as I said before to all viewers, there's a chat function at the bottom of your screen. If you could whiz through questions, that would be much appreciated. But I'm going to kick off. We've talked about Grade A office space, and we've talked about hotel rooms at the harbour, but has COVID made you reevaluate your mix of real estate in the city? Is what we need changing? Suzanne, can I start with you?
Yes, of course, Anna. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all sat back and reevaluated everything that we're doing. However, having done that, I would say that Joe mentioned the Belfast agenda, which is our plan to take us up as a city to 2035, and actually all the fundamentals in that are still relevant. So we still want to grow the living population. And we still have an office demand, albeit it may be that it's a different type of product in terms of the office, with much more collaborative working space as well, albeit that we have to reimagine what our high street looks like so we can support our independent retail, albeit that we absolutely have to bring back our international tourists. Joe talked about some of the products that are already here in Belfast and have done a great job to date, but we have significantly more plans. So, for example, our City Deal projects not only cover innovation projects and digital investment, but also significant investment in more tourism attractions to bring in more international tourists. And of course, we've had to reevaluate our sustainable credentials as a result of this, because the public have said to us, things have changed. We haven't been travelling, air pollution levels have gone down, etc. And we need to be much more sustainable about how we bring forward development in the future. And certainly that is something that we have well thought through in terms of our plans. And our local development plan here is actually in examination in public at this point in time for Belfast, and all of those things have actually been written in to that plan. So I think we were already starting to think about all of those challenges anyhow. This has brought more focus, and I think you can see how joined up we are right across the board as to how we actually make these things happen.
So maybe, Anna, if I can...
Joe, how do you want really changing for you at the harbour as you shape the harbour development?
Yeah, well, obviously there's been a very immediate requirement to adjust, and that's in respect of those two significant office buildings that we're developing at the minute, the 430,000 square feet. So we've reviewed those. We've asked our architects and contractors to review those through a contact lens, if I can call it, COVID lens. We will amend the proposed density. We're looking at the operation of the building and a lot more contactless features to the building. So actually, I think we're going to come out with probably the first purpose designed office accommodation in response to the COVID challenge by the end of this year. I think we're in a very favourable position then to adjust to respond to COVID outcomes, with in particular the residential opportunities. Fortunate that a lot of the sites across the city and inclusive within the harbour estate, we do have a lot of open space here in which to be able to design those residential developments, taking on board the new desire for people to have that much more open space, like the green and blue infrastructure that accompanies those sort of developments. We're fortunate that our sites are opportune to incorporating those design features and creating that breathable living communities. So we don't downplay the challenge provided by COVID, but I think we're in a great place to respond to it from a design and operation of our buildings.
While we're on COVID, and I don't want to linger on it for the whole session, but Chrissy, is there a concern about how many people are commuting versus coming back into the city, and how does that all affect TransLink and Weaves Cross?
Well, obviously we've seen a big change in behaviour during COVID-19. Some of it people have decided themselves, and a lot of it's to do with the government restrictions and asking people to stay at home and to work from home where possible. So that's had a big impact on the numbers on public transport. If just stick with COVID at the minute, we've actually had an increase in the number of people using public transport then for essential purposes. So a lot of health workers, a lot of retail workers have actually migrated to public transport to use it as essential transport for them. And what we're seeing going forward is that even during some of the reduction in the restrictions during the autumn period, that people did start coming back and did start to come back to wanting to work in the office at least part of the time, and did start to want to use public transport more for leisure purposes as well, a lot more leisure and travel on public transport. We've had inquiries, starting to get inquiries now from employers who are sort of saying, well, look, there is now a demand for people to get back to the office for part of the time. And there is a desire for people to use sustainable transport modes and use active travel modes. And they are asking us to what we can do to help them, maybe for people rather than using that second car, you know, to use public transport for the 2 to 3 day weeks and they're in the office. We're seeing a lot of people being very much more aware of the importance of clean air, respiratory illnesses, and the impact of COVID-19 as well. People don't want to return to congestion in our cities, and therefore they want to help support the clean air agenda, as well as young people are very tuned into climate change and making sure we do the right thing in that as well. So there is a big demand still for people to use sustainable active transport, and we're starting to see some early signs of that now, really.
We have a lot of questions coming in, but I'm going to be really greedy and ask 2 more quickly because I think they're really important. Suzanne and Professor Greer, what's this soft influence of what's happening in America on Northern Ireland? Because Biden has obviously referenced the peace deal and he's referenced strong links. And how does, for you going forward, is it a positive?
Yeah, a real positive. I think you might want to hear from Steve on that as well, because we already have such a strong relationship with North America, and you've heard about some of those big FDI companies that have come from America to here. I think that is only going to increase with Biden now about to enter the White House. We've already had direct contacts. We have sister city relationships with a number of cities in the US, but we've had direct contacts already from some state department offices looking for investment opportunities. So I think it's absolutely going to increase. I also think that how we work with other cities as well is really important. So we are part of the Core Cities group in the UK, and we have collectively, the 12 big cities in the UK have collectively come up with a campaign to go out internationally and market our cities as places of investment, because we all have niche opportunities, so we're not always in direct competition for the same type of investment, and I think also that we're looking at internationally as well, and we're also looking at how we work with Dublin on the island of Ireland, with a European state just an hour and a half down the road from here as well. So that's incredibly important to us that we, once we realise the opportunities of the Brexit deals and the Northern Ireland Protocol, that we can really find the sweet spot for continued FDI.
Professor Greer, do you have a view on relations with the US?
Yeah, I'd start by pointing out that the island of Ireland has a very special place in North America. We almost feel that we're a 52nd state when we visit. We are accorded some, really high levels of status there. We enjoy some great partnerships with US institutions, and we've got many alumni there. So I guess, if anything, these will, of course, strengthen. But I think there is an offer from this island, and I think that Brexit creates an interesting opportunity between the UK, Ireland, and North America. We're working in partnership with the key universities in the Republic of Ireland. There's very good relationships across the island. Many collaborations are developing, and these collaborations will be relevant not just to this island, but relevant to the UK and relevant to the US. So we could find ourselves ideally placed both in time and in geography with a new approach to doing business across the UK, Republic of Ireland, and the US going forward, and our ability to face into the EU and into the UK at the same time and enjoy these really good relationships with North America, I think could be quite pivotal for developing new business and attracting inward investment.
Yeah.
Steve, did you want to add to that?
You can't underestimate the importance of the US market for the island of Ireland, but in particular Northern Ireland. It's our 60% of our inward investment comes from US-based companies. It's our second largest trading partner after the Republic of Ireland. It is hugely important, and we're very, very close to it. And you know, despite the changes over the last 4 years in the White House, you know, why are US companies investing in Northern Ireland? It's because they can't get talent in the US. And that is still the same. That's still happening. And here in Northern Ireland, we have got phenomenal talent, and so we're still going to be really attractive towards those. I think certainly with President Biden going into place, well, you know, undoubtedly he has a love for Ireland. He has you know, heritage here in Ireland, and it can only help us.
I'm gonna take a question from the audience now. Bear with me, it's quite wordy. Would the panel agree that a critical step government could take is to provide for stimulus spending on capital infrastructure to create jobs and deliver tangible assets for Belfast and wider Northern Ireland? Who's up? Who's first up?
Well, I'll maybe start with that of the infrastructure, public transport, and
yeah.
Because he wants the money, don't you?
Yeah, as part of the bodies, the Department of Infrastructure, like undoubtedly a way to build back post COVID-19 and support economic growth is to invest in infrastructure, particularly borrowing so low at the minute. And I know there's a lot of investment going into COVID-19, but capital investment is really, really important, and it really will support building back. And there are a number of projects out there, you know, across the UK. We talk about levelling up and how that could help Northern Ireland. We also talk about what needs to be done in terms of connectivity across the UK, and there's a study already underway on that. And also there's the infrastructure we know we needed for higher speed rail. We know that our water infrastructure could do investment, and all of that will create jobs, and it will create opportunity for the long term and for the future. And of course, as we come out of COVID-19, we've got to address climate change. We know we have got to learn the lessons from COVID-19, heed the warnings early on rather than wait till it actually happens. And therefore, we need to heed the warnings of climate change and make that essential investments required for climate change. And we can build that green recovery. So absolutely, I think it's just all the indications are that building infrastructure is the right thing to do right now.
Steve, there's a question. Oh, sorry, Suzanne.
No. Just obviously the announcements that have been made by the UK Prime Minister recently in relation to funding, some of which has been funding for infrastructure, and we might have to make sure that we get our fair share of some of those funds, infrastructure, but also in terms of research and development as well. Quite significant funding coming out of the UK for that too.
I have another question about aerospace industry disappearing, but I know from conversations with Steve that we've had some big projects underway and a lot of FDI. So maybe can you clear that up for us, Steve? Yeah, so it's no secret that the aerospace sector has been hit massively hard by this pandemic. But certainly, from Invest Northern Ireland's perspective and from working with the companies in that sector, we know that a lot of them are really doubling down on their R&D at this time, and really looking forward to trying to see when those markets pick up again, which, I think the whole analysis will say that, it's a couple of years delayed, but certainly the ambition from the Northern Irish aerospace companies is to get into more of those supply chains. Some of the other things that we're trying to do with those companies is to take them into different markets where where perhaps their skill sets can match. So, here in Northern Ireland, we make 30% of the world's aircraft seats, and a lot of our aerospace companies are supplying into those. But we are trying to actively open up other transportation seating type companies around the world and take them to those markets as well. So, we know they're hurting, and we're really trying to work closely with them to get access to new supply chains and new opportunities. Thanks, Steve. Professor Greer, a question here on what advice can you give young professionals that see Belfast as a great investment opportunity, i.e. property development? What would you say?
Well, I probably can't advise them on the value of properties, but I certainly can advise them on how good a place it is to live and to work. And we've got some really exciting opportunities developing with that growing knowledge economy. And I should say it's not just graduates. I think I saw a question in the question boxes about the people who didn't go to university.
Yes.
And indeed, we're working with further education colleges at present. In fact, we met with them yesterday to look at how we build a whole ecosystem around skills. so that all aspects of the skills agenda can be developed across the universities and further education working together to make sure that we've got the full pipeline of different skills, and perhaps more importantly, the ability to reskill as you go through your career, because life changes, technologies change. And just by way of example, when COVID struck and we had to move into online learning, etc., a lot of people were displaced from their jobs, either furloughed or indeed lost their jobs. Within weeks, we developed a suite of courses that would reskill people within the space of 5 to 6 months, up to the level of a postgraduate qualification that would allow them to go in and work in a different sector. You know, for example, we took people who had no expertise in computing science, and we were able to develop them into software engineers in 6 months, allowing them to transition into a new job. Likewise, we've got multiple continuing professional development opportunities across both universities and the further education sector that allow us to reskill people while they're working or upskill them while they're working. So I think it's a really great opportunity for young people to come and establish a career here.
Thank you. Another one, I really like this question. Can Northern Ireland Belfast now offer a gateway to both UK and the EU post-Brexit? I mean, it's really interesting positioning, isn't it? Steve, Joe?
Yeah, again, very, very happy to answer that. So yeah, I think there are phenomenal opportunities for us. Obviously, it's very early days. You know, the trade agreement, the withdrawal agreement was only signed a matter of weeks ago, but already we're starting to see opportunities for, you know, a company could come to Northern Ireland, design, develop, manufacture, commercialize a product that automatically can be sold into 2 of the world's largest global markets, EU and the UK. You know, as Joe said, there is zero friction between Northern Ireland and GB. And so, you know, it's early days. We're working through the implications of the withdrawal agreement and the protocols, etc. But, you know, my gut feeling is that there are absolute opportunities for us. And we as a team in Invest Northern Ireland will be doing everything we can to promote it around the world as a place to invest.
I suppose for me, because I'm just with one eye on the time and we're kind of running out of it, the big question, and maybe this is something for everyone to sum up very quickly, but following Brexit and COVID, how does Belfast compete on a obviously really competitive global stage right now, where everyone's looking to have that edge in investment?
Well, I think that we have set out our plan really for gaining that competitive advantage. But at the same time that we're doing that, we're also going to build back better and make sure that we build sustainability to that and a zero carbon future as well, which will boost the economy. But I think we have said, you know, we're using our public sector investment to stimulate the private sector investment. We have said we're going to have a big focus on R&D, with a big focus on those high value growth sectors that Steve and I talked about earlier on. We've come together as partners to set out a joined up plan and put our assets and our money behind it alongside the government investment and alongside the private sector investment. I think the positioning piece that you have just talked about is the absolute USP. The fact that we sit here on the island of Ireland with a foot into Europe and a foot into the UK is absolutely phenomenal for our future success.
Does anyone else want to come in? We've got a minute left in terms of
there's
competitive edge.
There's a question there, Anna, I think from Dale about you know, the focus on FDI, and you know, I just want to say to that you know, that FDI is one element of the whole investment strategy. You know, over the last 5 years, we've given out as an organisation 16,500 letters of offer to support. Over 90% of those are to locally owned companies. So we are absolutely very much.
I think we may have lost Steve momentarily.
Sorry,
So, I mean, I think unless anyone else would like to add to that, Joe, Chris, or Professor Greer.
Just one point, maybe, Anna, is that, you know, look, COVID's been tragic for a lot of people and been very challenging for us all. But we've continued to look for the opportunities post COVID-19. You know, the Weavers Cross development has continued. The procurement for a new developer or for a master developer has continued. We've launched orders for procurement orders for a new zero emission buses, for new trains. You know, we've been planning for post COVID-19, and I think we're all planning to build back better and build back more responsibly.
I think that's a great place to wrap up. Thank you everybody for attending, and thank you to our panel for giving us their time. As I said, this is a part of a series by MIPIM on the recovery of the UK regions. The next one is on Scotland on January the 29th. But once again, thank you for joining us today. I hope you found it interesting, and hopefully see you next time in Cannes.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.